Hey, listen up. Yeah, we here and we locked in. Let's keep it going all the way to the top 10. We feel the turtle, so it's no other option. Fred and Ryan, just watch them. Let's take it to the max. It's the Shell and Tell. They come with all the facts. It's the Shell and Tell. Let's take it to the max. It's the Shell and Tell. They come with all the facts. It's the Shell and Tell.
What's up, Terp fans? Fred and Ryan back with another episode of the ShellnTell podcast. It's Tuesday, September 6th. We got a lot to talk about on this week's show. We're officially undefeated as we start the season 1-0, but it wasn't all sunshine and roses during a 31-10 victory over Buffalo.
Yeah, it certainly was not. So we go back to the good old trusty good, bad, and ugly just to get that breakdown through.
And when we're done looking back, we'll look forward to ShellnTell's first road trip of the season to UNC Charlotte, a trip that Ryan and I are both taking together and we're looking forward to. Hit the road Friday. So excited for that. It's a city I haven't been to in a very long time. It's a beautiful area. So looking forward to not just the game, but everything that goes on around the game.
Yeah, back to the old ACC stomping grounds. For anybody watching on YouTube, you see I bust out the old Military Bowl jersey here from our ACC days.
Very tight.
Very tight. This
Very
was
tight.
worn by a much smaller man, even though he was a tight end in the ACC than I am. So yeah, just figured to bring us some good ACC luck. Bust out the vibes.
Very conveniently that camera is cutting out the belly.
Yeah, I mean, it is what it is. We got the number 86 here. Sorry, your ex-girlfriend sold all your jerseys. I don't know what to tell you.
All right, man. Before we start this week's episode, though, today's episode is sponsored by Quick Stretch and Body Works. Quick Stretch and Body Works help athletes with their performance and recovery periods, both during and in the off seasons. The naturally formulated athletic performance and recovery lotion is an easy, effective way for athletes to prepare for skill training and workouts in full swing. Founded by Todd Smith, a former college athlete and head athletic trainer at 2 collegiate programs himself. Even some of the athletes at the University of Maryland are taking advantage of the product, including star linebacker Ruben Hippolyte II. Make sure you head over to quickstretchbodyworks.com and check it out today. That's quickstretchbodyworks.com. But as we mentioned, man, at the top, Terps win in an almost unfulfilling way.
Certainly
on
how
Saturday.
it felt.
Yeah, I mean, 31-10. Listen, a win's a win. I'll take a 3-possession win every day of the week,
Especially later in the season.
Yeah, right. But I mean, just as we're walking out, I felt feeling a little let down as we're leaving out. But it's for multiple reasons, man. It's not just the team's performance on the field, but for me, and I don't, you and I haven't had a real chance to talk about this yet. It was pretty much the entire game day experience, if I'm being honest. It was pulling into the lot and seeing a bare lot, a bare 4B tailgating lot. And I understand this is Buffalo. This is kind of the quote unquote preseason of the season, even though these games count and they matter come, wins and losses. But I just, with all the national hype, with all the local hype around this team, I just expected there to be more fans. Even the partiers, man, the guys that just come out and want to have a good time and want to just drink a few beers and throw back and just go out there and be rah-rah for a day or whatever. It's, 12 o'clock in the afternoon. It's a warm summer sunny day. I was pretty let down by the turnout of the fans.
It wasn't great. I mean, it was definitely a different feeling than the game one last year with WVU, where there was a pretty decent turnout of both Maryland and West Virginia fans that kind of helped. Clearly, when you play some of these really small schools like Buffalo, the other team's not going to help at all in the, filling of the stadium. I mean, we were sitting right in the 50 Buffalo fans that were in the stadium, and that's just not going to do it. At Maryland, clearly we don't sell out the whole stadium without a little help from the other team, and we didn't do even our portion of the stadium for this game.
It was just, I don't know. It was kind of sad. You're coming off of their first bowl win and in a dominant fashion, right? Again, like I said, you got all this national hype. I just figured, I know we're homers, right? And we're the diehards. I just figured there were more of us out there than I guess I gave credit to, because and then I've said this both here and I've said it on Birdland. the state of Maryland in itself is definitely a what have you done for me lately fan base. And that was obviously evident with this. It's you got to win. I just don't know what it takes. I mean, is it that we have to get to a January 6th bowl before the excitement really builds and before we get the fans out in the stands again, week in and week out? It's sad that it takes just a big name, the Ohio State, the Penn State, the Michigans, to get the fans out and excited.
The depressing fact is it will always be that way because basketball, as big as it is at Maryland and as big as it is, going on, when you look at those games in December when the students aren't there, it's empty. There's
but it wasn't always
that
that way. It wasn't always that way. Yes, local over the last couple of years, yeah, it's been that way. And it's been a while since Maryland basketball, has been in the thick of things in the Final Fours or the Elite Eight. It's been a while since that's happened. So I get that they haven't had that full experience of a real winning tradition like Gary Williams days and the national championship days and all the runs that we made back then. But I mean, it's been a while that it's been that way.
Yeah. It really seems to be not only what have you done for me lately, but also, who the show is, and that the Terps by themselves aren't enough of a show. You've seen it in the student sections. Even they leave when they're up by 20. They leave when they're down by 10. They leave at halftime if it's hot. They leave if it's too late. They leave if it's too early.
I'll be honest. The student turnout was actually pretty damn good for the first half. I mean, then halftime hit and then they were all gone.
I guess, but really they only filled out 2 sections for the flag drop. They have like 5 that they go all the way to section, 8 or 9 right next to us. And those final 2 sections had nobody in them.
Right. Yeah, no, I guess that's true. But again, this about the fan base and this about the student section. So for me, I feel like, again, this goes back to the entire game day experience. Then the university needs to do more. Then the program needs to do more to draw fans in. Because to be honest with you, like walking in the gates today just felt like there was nothing special about it. It was just walking through the gates of any other Maryland football game. Yeah, the sound system was tuned to the best that it's been since we got the new audio board and since we got the new sound system. So that was good. But the visual presentation was basic. It was the stuff that they do to involve fans, the same shit that they've been doing for the last 15, 20 years. Like it's stale, it's old, and they've got these kids running this stuff, which I understand, like the involvement with the students and all that stuff. But when you buy a Ferrari, you don't give it to your 16-year-old to drive, right? You buy a Ferrari for you to drive, right? And I feel like there should be somebody else or a team of other people that run the game day experience. When you look at, I showed you this a couple of weeks ago now, what like South Carolina's doing, right? And you were saying the other week on the show, like, what's the draw with South Carolina? Where did they come out of? They're coming out of nowhere. But when you see the visual presentation that South Carolina's putting together just for player introductions and just to get the fans hyped up, like these are things that I feel like this university is just missing the boat on.
Yeah, there could be a lot more done there, but there's also just the fact of anybody that's been to a Maryland game in the last decade at a noon start in August or early September. How miserable was that, Fred? How bad was it in our seats?
The seats were terrible because it's like holding a piece of fucking aluminum foil in front of your face when the sun's just glaring off the bleachers. It is.
The noon games at early September, late August, you might as well just mark it down. 10 people are leaving the stadium with heat exhaustion, heat stroke.
I was almost one of them is what I felt like.
We saw a guy drug out of the stalls by some people and were passed out on top of the stands. Like, it's bad. My mom looked, we had 5 kids there, and of course, so everybody was basically taking turns bringing the kids up the shade, walk around, buying sodas, buying waters. And she looked the other day. I haven't even looked what I spent because I spent plenty of money too. And I know you spent money, but I was talking to her and she said, I just happened to look at my credit card statement today and we spent over $100 in just ice cream and water at the Maryland game, and so it's just, and that was just, it wasn't to have a great time. It was just to keep the kids alive. Like that was what it was for.
And to that point,
kind of rough.
to that point, visually, when you were looking at the visitor side and you thought, Jesus, that side is completely empty.
There were 30,000 people standing in the shade at the top of it.
That's a little bit of an exaggeration, but yes,
a little bit of exaggeration.
The majority of the fans were definitely in the concourses watching out at watching out at the game versus actually being in their seats because of that.
It was miserable.
And I have the proof in the pudding here on the face with the sunburn.
Yeah, and I only went up at halftime. I stayed in the seats almost the whole game. It was like I fought through it many a times. Wore ridiculous sunblock, put it on twice, like it still had some burns. So, yeah. But it's. I mean, my mom went there in the 80s. They called it Bird Beach back then. Everyone would go in the middle of December and catch a suntan because you bake with that aluminum in the sun. And when you don't fill out the stadium, and so you don't have people covering the aluminum seats, you're going to be in a George Foreman grill.
It's hell. It's absolute hell. I hate complaining about it because you got great seats down there, but it is absolutely miserable.
Yeah, it's the number one reason to dump into that Terrapin Club money and jump into the shade behind the Tyson's Tower over there.
Yeah, exactly. But I don't know. Just for me, again, there's little things. You spend all this money, which is great. We've been barking for it for I don't know how long now to get the video board to kind of come up to par with everybody else in the Power 5 and everybody else in the Big Ten. We did that, right? But to me, you could spend a little bit more money annually to put professionals in there. Like you said, even when we first walked in, they had a DJ that was running the music when you first walked in. That's cool. That was a nice touch, and that was a noticeable difference. And again, the sound was tuned much better than it has been since that thing has been installed. I give them credit for that. But let's take it to the next step, man. It's just, again, the scoreboard, the down markers, all that stuff, the entire game were completely off. Nothing was accurate. I didn't know what down it was half the time unless I was like fully focused, but you got kids running around everywhere. You got other things going on that distract you. You couldn't rely on the scoreboard for accuracy. To me as a fan, it's frustrating. And when you're trying to draw fan base in, you got to do those small things to get them on board.
And you also, know that you're going to have trouble with these noon games. You have for decades. And so either you don't have them or do something about it. Give away tickets. I look at Ben Page with Old Line Tailgate, and they tell, he tells us how much he has to pay per seat. How are they not giving out a better deal for 1,000 tickets to somebody? Like just get people in the stadium. That's how this starts. And if you don't want to do it with somebody like Ben, do it yourself. Go out there, give 1,000 tickets to 3 or 4 elementary schools to these games you can't fill. These tickets are going to be sitting there, and just get something born in the grassroots. These kids are going to be 18, 19, 20 years old. They're going to be 30-year-olds like me I didn't go to University of Maryland because they didn't have a major on campus that I was going to do. Cool. I still spent my whole childhood going to Maryland. So I still dump my time and money into Maryland. So Why not, when it costs you nothing to bring people in there? And honestly, like I said, we spent $100 on 2 girls for ice cream and water. You give 1,000 tickets away to a bunch of elementary school kids, you're going to make $50 a head on ice cream and water.
Right. That's a great point. But again, we're basically preaching to the choir because I think a lot of us diehards feel this way, and I think
don't have a noon game. Just don't do it.
Just get rid of it altogether.
I know you're making more TV money at noon than you would have for the 3:30 slot somewhere else. Cool. Just don't do it. It doesn't work here.
Right. I agree. All right, but let's talk a little bit about this game because, again, like I said, we felt a little bit empty leaving the stadium.
Which we feel like crap for being upset about a 21-point win.
Yeah, as upset as you can be about a 3-possession win. Let's talk good, bad, and ugly. We do this every week. This is week 1, right? So let's start this one with the ugly.
We don't build some positive stuff. We already started negative. Might as well get it out of the way.
Positive on a good vibe. Let's get the negative out of the way. So the ugly for me, first and foremost, right out of the gates, the snaps from the center. Jahari Branch, now this year starting center. I have a little bit of PTSD with this because the Ravens a couple years ago struggled with this immensely, and I just don't understand it. Matt Skura I don't know if he got the yips or what the hell happened, but every center that came in afterwards had the same issue. I'm like, what the fuck is happening? This is a basic fundamental of a center for football. This is your entire premise as a center, right? This is something that you've been practicing since you were a kid. I don't understand that. Okay, if Jahari Branch isn't the guy and he isn't, he has these issues, why is he in there? Why is your starting center on day one? Because again, this is just something that's so frustrating and it's so crucial to the flow of an offense. This is how the offensive play starts. And if it starts off on the wrong foot with a high snap, low snap, whatever it may be, the rest of the play is just basically a recovery. It's basically Talia recovering for the bad snap.
Absolutely. It's also something to me that you can easily practice outside of live reps. So this whole, it's the first game, get out of the, no, that doesn't really work for this. Yes, there are things that you are very hard to practice at game speed with the wide receivers running routes against guys that they don't know every tendency of every corner. They haven't played things like that.
But a snap
is a snap. You just do it. And if you can't practice it with somebody in front of you, they don't have enough hours for that, well, then set up a machine that punches him in the face 1 second after he snaps the ball. I don't care. You can find out a way to make this dude snap the ball and get his hands up, and that's all it is. And I can't see that. Yes, was this team better than we thought that they were going to be? The Buffalo, 100%. Fred and I walked down to our seats, and the first thing Fred said to me was, "These guys look a little bit bigger than I thought they were going to be."
Yeah. And
they were. The offensive line by Buffalo surely was bigger, and the defensive line was a little bit bigger than we expected.
Yeah.
So sure. Maybe we had unrealistic expectations.
Listen,
but there's
not
no way
every
this
opener
is
is going to be a 72-0 like it was over Howard or whatever, or 79-0 like it was.
There's no way
Howard.
This is the best nose guard you're going to see all year. That's just not. Right. So if you can't do it versus this guy, then you just can't do it. I would be shocked. I'm sure because of the way step down in competition, they're going to try to leave Branch into this spot for this next game. But if this happens even to halftime of that game, there's no way he can be your starter in the game 3. There's no way.
So to that point, I know we talked a little bit about it during the game. Last year, a guy that took a lot of the snaps, Spencer Anderson, was playing right guard. And, I like him at right guard. But again, when you're struggling consistently, it wasn't just 1 or 2 snaps, and it wasn't here and there. I mean, it was every other snap, if not every snap, especially early on in the game. Why are you not moving Spencer Anderson over and plugging somebody else in at right guard just to give you that stability at center?
And Spencer Anderson had some issues snapping balls over his head, but at least that was the only place I remember those snapped. I don't think you could tell where Jahari's balls were going at all. They were left, they were right, they were short, they were tall. Nothing was repeated at all. You also brought in Eric Harris, who was supposed to be your center last year before Spencer Anderson took over. And he's still on the squad. Haven't heard anything about him. Colton Deary.
Is he? Wow, that's surprising.
He's still listed on the roster, but we've heard
okay.
He's not in the 2 deep. We haven't heard any talk about him being at center.
I know Colton Deary did get some snaps in the game,
Colton Deary was brought in and got some snaps. Again, huge future. But I honestly kind of thought we were past starting freshmen in the Big Ten. Maybe I'm wrong.
Right.
I mean, of course, we're still doing on the defensive side and all, but I thought that we'd build this offensive line a little bit deeper than that. But I don't know.
Speaking of offensive line, how did you feel leaving the game about the offensive line as a whole, minus just the issues at center, the offensive line as a whole?
So leaving the game, I felt like real dismay. Like, oh my God, if that's what we look at there, it's going to be bad. Because in my head, Talia was under pressure the whole game when I was there watching it. But I think what it was a little bit of that, watching him, like you said, recover from the bad snap. And
Panic.
So he looked rushed. He looked flustered in those moments. And so it felt like he was more under pressure than he actually was. When I went back and watched the whole game, they did a pretty good job. There were definitely some issues. Jalen Duncan with 2 big penalties. I mean, this guy's supposed to be a day 1 draft pick at tackle.
A lot of people have him as a top 3 offensive tackle in the NFL draft next year.
You cannot have a holding and an illegal hands of face that was completely unnecessary. It was directly in front of us. He was running right at the 35-yard line, right at my seats, and he had this dude dominated, and he just let his hands get up too high, and he's cranking this dude's face mask while he's already moved him 15 yards from the line. Like, of course you're going to get this call. So it's just completely unacceptable for a guy of his stature to get caught in stupid things. Locks likes to talk, and he did again in this press conference about the competitive plays of the pass interferences, the holdings, the illegal hands to the face, being very different than the offsides, the illegal snap, the kick out of bounds, the ones that we had that were totally like operational penalties. But I'm sorry, there is a difference in you got pass interference because you're hand checking a guy and you're playing hard versus you never turn around. There's a difference in you get caught for a hold because basically he's holding on every play, or you're out on an island by yourself with your hand in his face mask. How do you think you're getting away with that 10 yards away from the center? It's not going to happen.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you're jumping a little bit because that's the penalties was an issue in our bad.
I'm sorry. You got me angry about Duncan.
No, I know. This is kind of one of those things where you open one thing and it's like Pandora's box. But so speaking of that, right, a lot of calls in this game. That was another one of the ugliest things of this game. It had nothing to do with the Terps themselves, but it had to do with the men in the Zebras, the officiating. The officiating was terrible in this game.
Terrible officiating. I actually didn't even look up. I meant to where the hell they got these, because usually when it's an inter-conference officials, they use a different conference's officials. Well, wherever they came from sucks. These guys, there was one back judge that I swear to God, he had his money on the spread because he was coming up with all kinds of dumb calls. He's the one that called the targeting call from 50 yards behind the defender, where a targeting means you took your helmet and hit it into the other person's helmet. So you have to see the guy's face to make the call. There were 6 other officials.
Snap back. That's all he saw. He saw his head snap back.
I don't even think he saw that. He heard the stadium go, oh, and he threw a flag because apparently in 2022 you aren't allowed to enjoy a hard hit. You just have to everybody stay quiet and we won't get this call. The man was standing. He extended his arms. He basically hit him with his hands that hard. There was no contact to the helmet. They ended up waving it off, which I watched the Big Ten coverage and they were like, oh, I'm very interested. They didn't call him a defenseless receiver and call that targeting. How can you target someone with your hands? Are we that soft in football now that if I hit you with my hands in like anywhere near your helmet range, that's a problem? Like my hands are not your helmet. They are weaker than your helmet. The using of the lowering of the crown of the head is a dangerous thing that needed to be taken out of football, but touching someone should just not be taken out of football. There shouldn't be any amount of time between touching a ball and touching another person that you just get to do what you want. There's like, this isn't a punt. We don't have to wait 3 yards. It doesn't make any sense.
Right. And then the other one I think that stood out the most to me, and it's mostly because it was so egregious and it happened basically right in front of our face, was the non-call on the face mask of Rack. I mean, I get that you don't want to make that call right away because you have to be right up on it to see a difference between a stiff arm and a face mask. You actually have to see him grab it. But it got so bad, he held on to it for so long that his fingers got stuck in Rack's face mask. Now, kudos to Rack because he was still able to fight through that and make the play. A hell of a play for Rack. But I mean, again, this guy had his hand literally stuck in his face mask and twisted.
He tornadoed Rack in a circle. You can't do a 540 with somebody on a stiff arm. That's not how a stiff arm works. It was unbelievable. And then another one that it's coming off the head is when they were on the other side of the field driving towards the open end of the stadium, and Ami Finau broke through the offensive line. The center literally turned around completely with one arm completely extended, grabbing his jersey, and was being drugged by Finau towards the quarterback, and nothing was done. Nothing. Yep. And that was immediately after the attempt at calling a targeting penalty, and it was just like, oh, I see how this is going. Like we really
listen.
We're not letting them pick on the little kid.
I'm not one to harp on refs too much, just because you do get calls your way, and you get calls that goes against you. But this was awful. And it started from the very beginning of the game. It did not end until the game was over. I mean, it was bad the whole way through.
And it did not seem evenly officiated at all. You can be bad both ways. It didn't feel that way.
Right. So like I said, we're kind of combining ugly and bad here. We've already talked about the penalties as that was listed in our quote unquote bad. The other
it was bad and ugly.
Yeah. The other one, and this isn't so much a shot at him, more so I think a shot at the game plan. was the lack of use on newcomer Jacob Copeland. I mean, he had what, 2 touches in this game for 5 yards. I mean, this, I understand, and this is kind of what I said in the solo episode that I did the other day, is that I hope this doesn't become a diva fest where, you know, you've got this one wanting targets and that one wanting targets. If they're okay with, like, listen, this is going to be Rack's day, this is going to be Jay Sean's day, which this game was Jay Sean's day, this is going to be Copeland's day, that's fine as long as they're good with it and he can stay focused with it. But I just expected him to be a little bit more involved, especially against a team like Buffalo.
Yeah, and especially like you said, just the hype, like,
yeah,
getting Demas involved, getting Copeland involved were the talking points of the fans. Do you know what I mean? Like,
yep.
There was no, even with the whole like Demas thing, you know, I know I kind of course, like dramatize everything and make it like homeboy fan of like Demas getting the end zone, whatever. But even just Demas's first catch, how was there nothing at that moment even? Like even that is kind of momentous that he just came back and made a grab on a Big Ten football field, and there seemed to be nothing. There didn't seem to be any like, you know, it's just business as usual, which I get it. It is. It's business as usual for them. But it just, to me, felt bigger than that, and that there should have been some moment, some like all the receivers
I don't
together
know,
for
something
it, call
on the
a fucking
Jumbotron?
timeout, something, yeah. Like, yeah, coming on the Jumbotron for I'm coming back, the whole like epic video footage of him yelling that from the stretcher, like anything. And it was just, oh, he caught the ball. And I mean, yeah, it wasn't that impressive of a first catch. He made one very impressive catch going out of bounds. But again, another guy, I mean, he just didn't seem ready, or they didn't want to show the tools yet. I don't know which one. Jay Sean, coming back from a similar injury, looked all kinds of ready. All kinds of ready.
Yeah. So, again, I think the bad for me, it is Copeland's debut, but
you saw how much excitement fans had in the spring game for him. So how is it not, again, just a more concerted effort?
Yeah. So for me, it's basically a little bit of a lackluster performance from the passing game in general, right? Like you've got all of these weapons. Maybe I was expecting this ridiculous blowout, even though I didn't predict it that way. I wasn't too far off of my prediction, but I expected there just to be more high explosive plays, down the field plays. We just didn't see a whole lot of that in this game. But again, it's their first real football action, working together as a team since, the season started. So hopefully things progress week in and week out. And that's why they do this with these, non-conference games to start the season, because they know they got to work through things before they, get to the final product.
That's going to get easier before it gets harder.
Right. It's true. So let's move on to the good in this game. And I can't believe I'm going to say this because of all the crap that we gave this unit last year, and rightfully so, because this unit struggled to say the least all year long last year, except for the Pinstripe Bowl. And that's special teams. I mean, we were counting them off as things happened, one play after another. Like, special teams played a very, very clean game. No heart attack plays where our jammers are under the ball. None of that stuff that you were complaining about last year. Yeah. This is a very, very clean game.
I no longer have to stress about every punt return.
Right. And then obviously the prize piece to me, at least of the offseason, was the transfer in of Chad Ryland. This is a kid that not only were we kind of hyping up and excited about, but, you had talked about a couple weeks ago with how much kudos that Coach Loxley was even giving this kid. And he's kind of adapted into this like leadership role of the special teams unit, which is great. We heard about some of the field goals that he was making during practices. Googs even texted us and was saying, man, this guy's making a 65 yarders in the stadium with no to see it in person, it's pretty impressive. Ryland had a good game.
Yeah, Ryland needs a nickname, by the way, guys. Anybody out there that can come up with this Chad Ryland nickname, we've been kind of scratch our heads. This dude is going to be a weapon. It's going to be good that, we don't end with blanks on many drives. We can just get down there and get into field goal range. He had, one little blemish. He did kick the ball out of bounds. Locke said he overkicked it on a kickoff. But before that and all the other kickoffs, the hang time was very relevant as well, that there's not going to be a lot of kick returns in College Park against the Terps. I think there's been an awful lot of touchbacks for the other teams.
Yep. Next thing would be the running backs, man, and we're gonna save the best for our great. We're gonna do a great section too, but you can't go without talking about just this unit in general. We talked about how they're young and they've got a lot of promise and there's a lot of talent, but we wanted to see what it would look like in the game. And one guy who really put in the work in the offseason, transforming his body, I mean, from basically an offensive lineman body down to a true power back body. Antoine Littleton, real deal.
Absolute real deal. Antoine, I'm looking for a personal trainer. You want to come teach me how to slim down? You come hang out with me after your season's done here, man. Absolutely fun to watch. Still running people over, still bulldozing. I told you I was a little bit worried that kind of like his special sauce was just being bigger than everybody.
He lost the bad weight. He kept the good weight on, which is his strength. And like I told you before, when you're a power back, you learn how to throw your weight around. You learn how to use your weight to your advantage. And yeah, he trimmed down, but he still knows those power moves. He still knows how to leverage his weight. And you saw that in this game. I mean, multiple times he was just running guys over, dragging guys along with him. That's the change of pace back that I think this group is desperately going to need throughout the year.
And then also on that note, kudos to Loxley, who seems to have actually figured out that you need a goal line back, that your best back is
right.
not necessarily your goal line back, because they did use Antoine Littleton in almost all the goal line situations, almost all the 4th and 1, 3rd and 1, which they did miss on 2 of those. That is really needs to be worked on. But going back and watching and hearing Locks talk, it was way more of a lineman issue than it was a running back issue in those plays. So hopefully they'll get that all cleaned up, because that lineman it's one of those hard things to practice outside of live action, as you see in the NFL now with these goofy ass helmets they're having to wear all the way through preseason and everything. You can only line up and run into each other so many times before there's problems.
Exactly. So another group that was part of the good for us, and it's pretty much all the young freshman talent that came in this year. We wanted to see just how good and just how athletic Jayshon Barham was going to be. And I'm telling you, like, you read the numbers and you watch him on tape and you get a good feel for what he can do. But I didn't realize just how big this kid is. But when you saw him out on the field standing next to Ruben Hippolyte, I mean, and again, this is a true freshman.
Tiny.
Ruben looked real small next to Jayshon. So, and the football IQ was on display. I kind of attribute the same way I felt to watching him to almost like the first game that I watched Brandon Jennings, when Brandon Jennings was here, because I left the game, like, even though they were both pretty hyped, I left the game even more impressed with what I saw versus what the hype was, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I think that this one came with a little bit more hype, but also more impressive than Jennings. But yeah, I see the comparisons there. He showed a lot in that game, and again, I've heard from multiple people we're going to see even more, because they really did not use Barham in any pass rush off the edge type situations in this game, and been told that's in the works. That's been practiced.
Right. Well, one of the other things that you and I noticed too while we were there that kind of stood out to me was, speaking of youth, was the rotation, especially at linebacker. You'd have one series out there where you'd have your ones out there, your guys that you expect to be out there. Then the next series out there, you've got Wheatland out there, and you've got some of these other younger linebackers out there rotating in and out. It wasn't that they waited until they had a 3-possession lead. I mean, this was early on in the game, and it was consistent throughout the game that they kept this rotation going. And to be honest with you, I didn't see a big drop off between one line versus the next.
No, I didn't. It's all the way through with the linebackers, the defensive line. That was kind of like the overwhelming theme, is like, we went there looking at, hype for these seniors and super seniors and these people that are like entrenched. And those guys, they didn't disappoint, but it wasn't quite as hyped as we thought it was going to be. All of them still have some stuff to work on, but the surprise factor of all this young being even better than we thought. All these people, getting this early experience, and the fact that all these running backs that we saw in that game, not a single one of them are leaving for the NFL this year. Yes, right. They can leave, and go somewhere else in the portal. Obviously, that's how it happens all the time now. But all of them are back next year, and multiple of them had NFL level looks.
Right.
And even with Roman Brown, like to see what he's getting in. I mean, you got 2 more years with this kid, and he looked pretty good. He didn't quite look like Hemby. He didn't quite look like Antoine Littleton, but I think he looked better than those guys did last year. And so what's that say for next year?
Right. No, I mean, again, his opportunities were very limited, and he had a couple of decent plays on the opportunities that he got. He's obviously able to catch the ball out of the backfield. He got a couple of decent gains. So I really saw out of that running back group as a core. So that takes us to the great, because we usually do good, bad, good, bad, and ugly. We're going to add a 4th one this week to the great, because there were a couple of key areas that we wanted to highlight. First, key player. It was our offensive player of the game, Middle River's finest, as I call him, Roman Hemby. I mean, this kid did everything right in this game, took advantage of the limited carries that he had, took him to the house. 7 carries for 114 yards, 2 touchdowns. Big game.
Absolutely. I mean, the 2 breakaway touchdowns, 33 and 70. That's what we talked about last year. You said what the team was missing. We didn't have that Anthony McFarland. We didn't have the guy that just, if you didn't get him in the line, it's over. And Hemby showed that kind of speed. We saw online today, he was apparently posted the 3rd fastest run of the week.
21.1 miles per hour, I think is what it was.
Yep, absolutely flying, and it looked that way. I mean, he was pulling away from defenders within 5 yards of the line of scrimmage. You could just see every jersey was getting farther from him. And yes,
exactly,
it's still a MAC team, but there's athletes on that field. Don't get it twisted. There was a dude, Michelle, out there with no pads on. Coach Locks, look into Buffalo's Michelle, who's injured right now. You want him in the transfer portal next year. The dude is built like a flipping tank.
Right. And the one thing that, we knew that Buffalo presented was that they had a decent front and they had this really good linebacker in Patterson. And to be honest with you, I didn't really notice him during the game, at least there on tape. When I watched it, he jumped out a little bit more to me than in person in the game. But to have this running back and this running back core, and to the credit of the offensive line, be able to create the holes that they did against this defensive front and against a linebacker who is usually great against the run game, to have that kind of a game is big for Hemby.
Yeah, it's really big, and Rack had a good game. He had 1 drop, that was a problem, but definitely give him credit. Like we said, Jayshon Jones looked like he was coming a whole new man. That injury is holding him back none. The one thing with Jayshon, I did see a little freshman popping off. I saw him picking fights after multiple plays, so hopefully that doesn't bite us in the ass, because he brought the attitude back.
I must have my blinders on. I didn't want to see it, so I didn't watch.
Well, you saw the Mutombo finger he did mid-run, the gif there, and then there was another one by the sidelines that he was picking a fight. So I mean,
he's
I know
it's
him. That's what he does. He's a tough guy.
Got a little diva in him.
But I'm just careful. We saw how bad that won our sophomore year. Just make sure when it matters, we don't catch any 15-yarders.
Right. Well, one of the position groups that I think we talked a lot about, where starters, they've got a lot of talent, but beyond the starters, we were kind of questioning. Well, let me tell you, the guys that played on the field in this game, the DBs looked very good. The guys that you would expect to be good shine most. Tarheeb still didn't have a single pass completed against him in this game when in coverage. Jacorian Bennett, who we picked as our defensive player of the week, 5 passes defended and 5 tackles, good for 1st and 2nd on the team in both categories.
Yeah, 1st in the country for the passes defended and 2nd on the team in tackles. Unbelievable performance there. And so it's just really hard to not, I mean, I know Steele got 0, but it was hard to give to the guy that the quarterback just chose to go away from versus the one that did some work.
He would have had, it would have been a real hard decision between him and Hemby for player of the game. If we were just going to pick a player of the game, had he converted on that pick 6, it just hit his hands.
The pick 6 would have definitely been would have been player of the game there, because that would have given me my bet. I would have covered the spread.
Yeah,
my half-point loss. I cannot believe that I got a really early number. I put my bet in super early. I got a 21.5, and the game went off, I think, at 24.5 or 25, and I still lost by that half point because it was 21.
Exactly.
Oh man.
Now, Deonte Banks, I think he looked okay in this game. I mean, definitely things that he needs to work on, but they were going after him. Obviously, he was the guy back from injury and whatnot. So it was good to see him get his legs underneath him. Good to see that the game speed wasn't too much for him or anything. He looked good in coverage as well.
He looked good in coverage. He did have the one pass interference where he just didn't get his head around at all. It wasn't too terrible. Didn't turn around. I actually think he was the one on our close sidelines, which was more just a great play by the receiver who just hugged his helmet and got the call. And then the other problem, which Locks got into his ass for, was he was the one that was offsides on the missed field goal attempt, which didn't go bite us in the ass because they tried to go for it on fourth down and we got the ball back. But that's something that you cannot have. You going into a Big Ten stadium and somebody misses a field goal on you and they get a second try. That is not okay. That is the kind of stuff that gets you really reamed out by your friends, your fans, the team, everybody. So you can't be offsides on a field goal attempt. That's a no-go.
Yeah, exactly. So again, just some mental errors. And it wasn't just him. It was all around with this team. Again, we mentioned the penalties and all. This team needs to clean those things up. That was obviously a really bad problem last year. I mean, they were one of the worst teams in the Big Ten as far as penalties go. So that's hopefully an issue that they can get cleaned up. They have to if they want to compete in this division. But overall, listen, again, they won by 3 possessions. You know, we can harp on the little things we want. We want this team to come out and play perfect. We want them to be the best that they could possibly be. So we're going to highlight good, bad, and ugly like we do every week. But overall, I'm happy with this performance. Was it as big as it was we wanted it to be? Like I said, that I feel a little empty when I left, yes. But overall, when you look at the grand scheme of things, they were able to win this game again by 3 possessions. So I'm happy with it.
Yeah, it just looked a little bit messy. It looked like the things that we scored on were these big breakaway runs, and it's like, how repeatable are those? We thought we were going to be more tacticians and picking them apart down the field, and that just wasn't what it was today. But, you know, you're going to have to win in a bunch of different ways, and as long as we keep winning, we're good. Are we kind of behind the 8 ball for Talia for Heisman? Yeah, but we're still in line for winning the Big Ten East. Hey, as long as you keep winning, undefeated's undefeated, baby.
That's true. That's true. Yeah, Leah, you know, again, not his best showing. He did have the 1 interception overthrowing Deiches. He had the safety just basically sitting back there waiting for it. So, yeah, there's definitely some things that he could clean up too. But I think that, again, part of his game starts with being comfortable, right? And when you have issues with the snap, he instantly, and you can see it, he goes into like this panic mode where he feels like he's got to, again, recover, and he's got to make up ground, and he's got to get rid of the ball quick, and he's got to go through his possessions, because that like half a second that it takes for him to have to jump up, catch the ball, and then recenter himself. Now he's got to find where his wide receivers are in their routes and whatnot. So his eyesight, his line of vision, all that stuff is off, and things are happening around him a mile a minute. So it all compounds downs and it affects his performance. So in all, was it a bad game? No. Was it a great game? No. Did it diminish his chances at the Heisman Award? But overall, I'm still okay with his performance. 0 through the air was kind of surprising to me. I mean, that's very rarely happened to Lee. I mean, he threw record amount of touchdowns last year and last season. So that was a little bit of a surprise, but hopefully he can make up for it in this upcoming week's matchup versus Charlotte. But before we talk Charlotte, why don't you give a shout out to Nilwire?
All right, before we go any further, we are going to take a second for Nilwire. Nilwire is a fan-first NFT marketplace created by a couple of brothers whom are also former athletes to help connect fans and athletes together. Their mission is to help athletes monetize their name, image, and likeness and utilize blockchain technology to bring value to their fans. With Maryland defensive lineman Mo Kite and Ami Finau partnering with the fast-rising company, their vision is to help athletes beyond sports and provide them a network to their fans on another level. Be on the lookout for the Baller Series 1 NFT collection, which is launching on Nilwire Marketplace this month. Make sure to sign up for pre-sale at nilwire.io. Get early access to the athletes' NFTs and support the players on nilwire.io.
All right, man. Well, let's talk Charlotte, right? Charlotte comes in right now 0-2 on the year, coming off of 2 pretty embarrassing losses to FAU and William Mary, right? This is a team that not trending in the right direction.
Not trending.
No, but you and I are getting a chance to go down there and watch this game firsthand, which again, like I said, I'm super excited for, super pumped for. It's our first road game of the year. This is kind of like a pregame for us for the big trip later this month into Michigan, which I'm super excited for. Tell me a little bit about Charlotte and kind of what to expect. Anything that they can really hang their hat on? Anything good?
Well, I can tell you that the ticket prices don't come down like they do the Terps teams. I mean, I could buy $3 Buffalo, Maryland tickets, but I couldn't get a deal at all in this Charlotte, Maryland thing. So we went ahead and bought through the Terrapins for the away game fund and got that going. So it'll be fun. That's always a good process to go into the will call. A lot of them are like parents of players and stuff and get to kind of navigate that situation. So that's kind of fun. But this team and William Mary, like you said, 0-2 against FAU. All right, cool. It's an FBS opponent. But then
Right.
William and Mary, an FCS opponent, that's last FBS win was in 2009. Like, it just not a good look. They were without their starting quarterback who got injured, Chris Reynolds. He had a non-throwing injury in the week 0 matchup against FAU. And so they were with freshman quarterback Xavier Williams, who stepped in as replacement. Kind of looks like a bit Piggy-ish, kind of mobile, kind of just get the job done. Like,
Oh, you
nothing
mean the
really
backup
impressive.
at Towson? That guy?
Yeah, the one that's in his year 37 of college football, who's played for 3 years of Maryland football, Western
man.
Kentucky, Towson. How is Piggy still playing?
I don't
and
know.
now he's a backup quarterback. My man is just likes college. He's just there.
Apparently.
I hope he has
Forever
a
a college
second
guy.
doctorate at this point. What can I get his transcripts? I want to see Piggy's transcripts. All right, back to Charlotte. I'm not sure about the quarterback situation of who's going to get to play in this one. It's up in the air. They haven't announced who's going to be the starter. But honestly, let's be honest. It doesn't matter. This game's about the Terps. And if the Terps play even as bad as they did last week, they're going to blow this team out. Like, this is about us and whether we play well enough to win. It doesn't matter who's on their team.
Right. So this is another tune-up game. This is another, get things right, work through things. If you've got things that you want to test to see how they run against certain defenses and certain formations, this is a game to do it because you got a little bit of wiggle room to do it. Again, this should be, like you said, a walk in a park. It's a team that really doesn't have a whole lot when you look at their running back core. Shadrick Byrd is the leading rusher. He's got 27 attempts for 97 yards or less he had on 7 carries last week. So, I mean, there's that, right? They've got a decent wide receiver, Grant DeBow, 6'3", 200 pounds. He's a junior. He has got 8 catches for 156 yards. So statistically, again, nobody that really jumps off the board. The quarterback situation still up in the air, whether who's going to start, if it's going to be their normal starter, or if it's going to be the backup, the freshman. So this is a game that, again, I think the Terps need to focus in on improving and themselves up for Big Ten play.
Yeah, I mean, these statistics these guys have should be the Terps stats by halftime. Like that's what you're looking at. I mean, their leading wide receivers get 8 and 156. If Rack doesn't have that by halftime, this game's gone wrong. I don't know. I'm excited to go down there. I'm really interested to see this very tight 30,000 person stadium they have down there. So it should hopefully still hold a good atmosphere. God knows, based on the fact that I couldn't find any tickets for resale, Charlotte must still be going to their games, even though they are 0-2 versus bad competition. So God bless the fans down there.
Another guy that, that we hadn't really talked a little bit about that I want to see even more of in this game, because the sample size that we saw was small, but what I saw, I really liked. And that's freshman Octavian Smith. The kid that, Ahmed talked a lot about and said, listen, this is a guy that's going to earn his way onto the field. Even with the depth that this team has at wide receiver, this is a guy that Loxley's just not going to be able to keep off the field for multiple reasons, not just as a wide receiver, but also on special teams as well, which he had an impact in that Buffalo game. This is a kid that I think that maybe if you are considering using him and burning his red shirt this year, I'd like to see him in the mix this game.
Yeah, I think his red shirt's definitely getting burned this year. He will be playing in more than 4 games. I mean, he's listed as a starter on special teams. He's listed in the 2 deep at wide receiver. I can't see a world where all of a sudden that's, putting him to the back and hoping that you save him. I'm a fan of his. We had an argument on who was the special teams player of the week, and Colton Spangler won out in the situation. But his
Cole Spangler had a hell of a game.
Had a hell of a game. His one attempt at a kick return was one kicker away from being 6 points. He had got a 41-yard return on his one attempt, and the kicker for Buffalo is what stopped him. So, I mean, the kid is special. The kid's electric, and I really hope that that's not the longest kick return of the year. I don't think it will be. I think this man is going to be standing in the end zone after one of these kickoffs this year. I'd almost guarantee it.
And shout out to Colton Spangler, man, who, like I said, he was our special teams player of the week. Ryan and I went back. Ryan had already kind of made the decision that Octavia Smith was going to be it without consulting me first. I said, wait a minute. Let's look at the total picture here, right? We can't just
bang the table for you, Colton.
I did, man. We can't just forget about the punters. And I'll be honest with you, because it's your buddy. It's Aunt Pecorella, man. That's the one that's always like, hey, you're forgetting about the punters. You're forgetting about the kickers. So I made sure I noticed you guys, because it's the guy who had 4 kicks, averaged over 51 yards per punt, had one that was down at the 1 yard line, had 2 of them that ended up being inside the 20. So a big game for Colton Spangler. So shout out to him.
Yeah, Ethan Go made a real dramatic front flip down of that ball. I'm almost certain the ball had already stopped rolling, but it looked really good on camera, Ethan.
No, it didn't. Go back and watch. That ball was still bouncing around. It bounced back towards the way, but listen, you can't touch that end zone line at all, so he did it the right way.
That was a very athletic one, and yes, I will give Peck the credit. Last year, he gave us some shit about we had an offensive player and defensive player of the game, so that is why I added special teams this year, and so on top of that, Mr. Fred made sure that the punter got the first one.
Colton earned it, man. It was a big game for him. But all right, so let's look at the numbers here with Charlotte, right? So right now the spread 27.5, the over under 66. I'll let you start with your predictions on this week. Just kind of how do you see this shaking out, and maybe give me your prediction for even a player of the game. Let's just throw that out there. Who do you think your player of the game is going to be this week?
All right. Again, defense was actually a little bit more impressive last week than I thought they were going to be. I thought there was going to be a little bit more nervousness or some drives that had to sell out late. So I don't see a team like this that's losing to FAU, a team that's losing to William & Mary, really scoring points against us. I'm going to give them credit for 10 points. Again, probably a cheap touchdown at some point on a broken play, a broken coverage that we're trying some exotic stuff, and then a field goal they probably earn. And I'll go 54-10. I did not get the 54 I wanted last week. We're going to try it this week.
Keep playing so you hit it.
Player of the game. So I would imagine that we're going to see a little bit more of the backups this week. But Talia played awfully long. So I'm going to go with Talia.
Damn it.
Talia's gonna come back, show off. He's gonna throw for like 500 some yards, and it'll be like 2 or 3 players over 100 yards receiving, and so you'll have to at that point give it to Talia, not the wide receivers.
Yeah, you and I didn't talk about this pre-show, so we don't get a chance to pick different guys, because I'm going to go Talia too. But anyway, I've got the Terps winning this one pretty handedly. I'm not going to go quite as a landslide as you. I'm going to go 48-13. So they do go under the 66, and they do cover the spread. I think Talia, to your point, man, is going to have a field day in this game. And I think he's going to, again, no touchdowns in week 1. Not saying that he's going to make an emphasis to make up for it, but he's got a real opportunity here to make up for it. So I'm going to say of those 48 points, 5 of those are passing touchdowns by Leah. So I'm going to say he's got 5 passing touchdowns, somewhere around that 400 to 450 yard mark in the game. But key stat, 5 touchdowns, 0 interceptions. I do see this being a game where they are going to work a lot of the younger guys in, a lot of the, the 2s and the 3s in, just to get some guys some work. So it'll be maybe a little bit of a sloppier game on defense than we want to see. Whereas, like I said, I think they'll still give up 13 points. Even with our 3s out there, it doesn't matter. I just don't think that this team presents much of a threat to us, but maybe there's a misread or whatever happens. And I just think that they end up giving up 13 points. But that's where I'm at with it right now.
Yeah, don't count out those running backs, though, because I don't think there's a player on that team that can tackle Antoine Littleton in open field.
Right.
And there's certainly no one as fast as Hemby. So either one of those could end up with a 200-yard day and be the player of the game as well.
Right. I want to see CJ Dupree get his first catch receiving touchdown. I want to see that happen in this game. That would be kind of cool. It was a guy we noticed at first.
He looked a little better in this game. He
looked a little better,
drop-ish, but he looked a little better.
They put him out wide a couple of times. You're thinking, what the fuck? Who's going to match up against this guy?
Scary when he's on the edge. He really does.
He is a big boy. But then every time they would put him in motion and he'd come back up to the line. But
one day they are going to leave him out there on a corner, and it's going to be interesting.
Yeah, for sure. I like to see him get his first touchdown, and maybe he will, because we did see. Unfortunately, I haven't heard any updates yet, but we did, see. Oh my God, the other
Corey Dyches.
Yeah, Corey Dyches limp off the field a little bit. The way he was holding his leg as he was limping off, to me, and I'm no medical professional, seemed crampish, because he was kind of like, he kept his leg fully extended, almost as if like something was locked up. I don't know if it was up in his thigh or if it was in his calf or what. There was no bending of the knee, and it to me, I've been that way. I've felt that before, and I know what that looks like. So to me, that's what it seemed to me. But again, I have no idea.
And even if it was just a cramp, we don't need to see Corey Dyches against this team. We can beat this team with just Weston Wolf. If you want to give both
Weston
of them
Wolf,
off the
LaRon
team,
Husband, CJ Dupree.
Yeah, I mean it's fine. So if anybody has any nicks and bruises, go ahead and just leave them in Maryland. Don't worry about driving them down to Charlotte. Don't be tempted to put them on the field, because we're good. This team's put away.
All right, so like we said, we're going to be up there in Charlotte. We leave here Friday, so we will be there for the weekend.
We're just going to check every rest stop to see if the team bus is there eating lunch.
Yeah. So if any of you guys out there that are fans are going to Charlotte and making the trip, let us know, man. We'd love to meet up. Chat a little bit. Maybe you guys have some suggestions for some restaurants or bar recommendations out that way. That's what we're looking for. I know, Ryan, you always do the campus eats thing to check out.
That only works in Big Ten towns, not UNCC towns.
That's true. That's true. But we're also going to be doing the Old Line tailgate, supported by the Terrapin Club. So you're going to talk a little bit about that and what that's all entails.
Yeah, so Old Line Tailgate with Ben Page, we've been supporting them for a while. We go to at least one a year. It's always a really good time, good food. Ben always has, in the last 3 years, I think it was, has done an away trip. This year, he's actually partnered with the Terrapin Club, so it's going to be a little bit bigger, a little bit better. I'm sure it's going to be a little bit more high-end when you get Terrapin Club involved. So it's an all-you-can-eat, all-you-can-drink type affair. And so we bought our 3 tickets for that. So I'm excited to go down there and see what they can put on together. Obviously, Charlotte's got a bunch of University of Maryland grads around there, so I think it's kind of more like a outreach to those that are still living around there and trying to reconnect old flames with the Terrapins in that area. So hopefully it'll be a lot of fun. I kind of expect there to be a pretty large Maryland contingent for this game. I think you're going to see an awful lot of red in here, but I could be wrong. I think
you're setting yourself up for disappointment, Ryan. Listen, we just spent 10 minutes in the intro talking about the support or lack thereof at our home stadium, and now you're expecting a good following on a road game to a team that's Charlotte. I mean, yeah, it's North Carolina, so I guess there's that, but I don't know.
All right, fine, you're right.
We'll see.
I'm hopeful.
We'll see. All right, man. Well, we appreciate you guys tuning in as always. Unfortunately, Ahmed had not unfortunately. I mean, Ahmed just had a wedding that he was occupied with, a prior engagement. So he's been a little disconnected and out of the mix for a few days, but he'll be back and ready to go for next week's show. So make sure you tune in. If you haven't already, follow us on all of our social media platforms. You can follow us on Facebook and Twitter. You can follow us even on Instagram. We're getting a little bit more active on there. We're trying to catch up with all the youngins out there. At least you are anyway. Not so much.
It's a lot easier with a 100-day countdon. So it's basically
that's true.
Players of the week at this point. But we'll see what else we can get going. Maybe with these trips, it'll be a lot more things to take pictures of.
Right. And if you got any questions or comments that you want to hear us answer on the show, make sure you're sending them into our email. You can send them to us at ShellnTellPod@gmail.com, or like I said, you can hit us up on Twitter. You can follow the show at ShellnTellPod, follow Ryan at Terps BSpert, follow me at Fred BLBS, and follow Ahmed at Kafir the Turtle. Ryan, sign us off.
All right, guys. Well, you got one more game to get it right, because after this, it gets real. We're going to need this tune-up game. SMU has got some talent coming to town. We cannot play like we did this last game, or it's going to be way too scary. So let's get this right. Let's stay healthy. Keep these boys good. Until next time, here's to wishing all is well under the shell.